One wrong move, and everything comes crashing down. That's exactly the feeling the trailer for Euphoria Season 3 Episode 4 delivers. Because this time it's not just drama, it's consequences. Real, unavoidable, closing-in consequences. And from the very first second of the trailer, it's clear that nobody is safe anymore, especially Rue. So picking up immediately from where Episode 3 left us, the trailer wastes no time in throwing us straight into chaos. The sound of police sirens cuts through everything, instantly setting a tense and suffocating tone. Rue is no longer running, she's been caught, and she's sitting in the back of a police car. That single moment already tells us that her past has finally caught up with her. And in a season that seems to revolve around reinvention and starting fresh, this is the worst possible thing that could happen to her. As she's taken into the station, the situation becomes even more intense. She's being questioned, and the way the conversation unfolds is incredibly calculated. They ask her about a photo that places her in Mexico. At first, it seems like a bluff, like they're trying to trick her into slipping up. But then, just as she starts to respond cautiously, they reveal that they actually do have it. And in that moment, everything changes. Because this isn't just suspicion anymore. This is evidence. The image connects her directly to the operation she was involved in with Lori, where she was acting as a mule, transporting narcotics across the border. And what makes this even more dangerous is not just the legal consequences, but the chain reaction it could trigger. Because if the authorities know this much, then it means they could start digging deeper. And if they dig deeper, they could uncover everything. Now this is where things get even more complicated. Because Rue isn't just dealing with the police. She's also tied to Alamo, and he's not the kind of person who can afford attention from law enforcement. If there's one thing that threatens his entire operation, it's exposure. So the moment Rue becomes a liability, she's no longer someone he can trust. And that's exactly what the trailer begins to hint at. We see subtle but very telling moments, Rue looking tense, watching everything carefully, almost like she knows she's being observed. There are shots of surveillance, money being handled, and a growing sense that she's right in the middle of something dangerous. It feels like she's walking on a thin line, where one wrong decision could turn everyone against her. And the most powerful part of this setup is how trapped she is. Because think about it, on one side, you've got the DEA building a case against her. On the other side, you've got Alamo and his crew starting to question her loyalty. And then there's Lori, whose presence still lingers like a shadow over everything. Rue isn't just in trouble, she's surrounded. Every direction she turns leads to someone who could destroy her. And what makes it even more intense is that she knows it. There's a shift in her expression throughout the trailer, something more desperate, more calculated. It's like she's trying to figure out her next move while everything is closing in. And that creates this constant tension, where you're left wondering, is she going to try and escape this situation? Or is she going to make a move that makes things even worse? Because at this point, survival might come at a cost. And the trailer makes it very clear that Episode 4 isn't going to hold back. This isn't just about consequences anymore, it's about pressure. The kind of pressure that forces people to reveal who they really are. And for Rue, this could be the moment where everything changes, permanently. As the trailer continues, the focus begins to shift slightly away from Rue's immediate situation, and we start to see how the rest of the characters are being pulled into their own turning points. And one of the most interesting developments comes through Lexi and Jules, because what looks like a simple opportunity on the surface might actually become something much deeper. We see Lexi on the phone, speaking in a tone that feels hopeful, almost excited. She tells Jules about an opportunity, something creative, something different. And considering that Lexi has been trying to build a path for herself in a more traditional and structured way, this moment feels important. She's not just surviving like the others, she's trying to grow, to build something real. And now, she's offering Jules a way into that world. But this is where things get layered. Because Jules is someone who has already stepped away from that path. She once had a passion for art, something that gave her purpose, something that felt genuine. But instead of following it, she chose a lifestyle that gave her fast money and independence, but at a cost. A cost that the trailer begins to bring back into focus. We start to see glimpses of her working on artwork again. There's a moment where she's painting, And it looks calm, almost peaceful. It's a complete contrast to the chaotic life she's been living. And for a brief second, it feels like she might be reconnecting with that part of herself. The version of her that wanted more than just survival. But the trailer doesn't let that feeling last for long. Because right after showing us that creative side, it flips the tone completely. We see her destroying the very thing she was working on. And that moment feels symbolic. It's not just about the painting, it's about the choice she's making. It's like she's rejecting that path all over again. And that raises a big question. Why? Because opportunities like this don't come easily, especially for someone in her position. So for her to walk away from it, or even sabotage it, suggests that something deeper is going on internally. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the belief that she doesn't belong in that world anymore. Or maybe she's already too far gone into the life she's chosen. And this is where Lexi's position becomes even more fragile. Because for her, this isn't just a casual project. This is her future. This is her chance to prove herself, to establish something stable in a world where everything else feels unstable. So if Jules ends up jeopardizing that, the emotional impact is going to hit hard. And the trailer hints at exactly that. There's a brief but powerful shot of Lexi in tears. And it doesn't feel random. It feels connected to everything we've just seen. Like something went wrong, something that affected her directly. And if Jules is at the center of that, it could damage their relationship in a way that's difficult to fix. Because unlike the others, Lexi isn't playing games. She's trying to build something real. And when that gets threatened, it's not just disappointment, it's personal. At the same time, this storyline adds another layer to the overall theme of the season. Because once again, we're seeing characters being pulled between two paths. One that offers stability, purpose, and long-term growth, and another that offers quick results, but comes with risk, danger, and emotional cost. And Jules is standing right in the middle of that choice. But based on what the trailer is showing us, it seems like she's leaning towards the darker path. The easier path. The one that keeps her in control, at least on the surface. And if that's the case, then the consequences won't just affect her. They'll ripple out and impact everyone around her. Because in a world like this, one decision is never just one decision. It always leads to something bigger. As the trailer moves forward, the tension surrounding Nate and Cassie begins to take center stage. And what we start to see is a relationship that's already beginning to crack under pressure. Because even though they've just stepped into this new chapter as newlyweds, it doesn't feel stable. It feels like it's already falling apart. We first see Nate in a completely different setting, standing in what looks like an official government building, speaking in front of a panel. And straight away, there's something off about the situation. He's not in control here. He's not the dominant presence that we're used to seeing. Instead, he looks pressured, almost desperate, as he talks about how everything happens for a reason. But what really stands out is his appearance. His face is still bruised, still marked by the beating he took earlier. And those injuries aren't just physical. They represent everything that's starting to collapse around him. Because at this point, Nate isn't just dealing with one problem. He's dealing with multiple threats all at once. The context of the meeting becomes clearer as the trailer unfolds. It seems like he's trying to defend a construction project, something that's now at risk of being shut down due to an environmental issue, an endangered flower. And while that might seem like a small detail on the surface, the consequences are anything but small. Because this project isn't just business, it's tied to something much bigger. If the project gets shut down, Nate loses money. And if he loses money, he can't pay back Naz, the person who already made it very clear what happens when things don't go his way. And that's where the real danger comes in. Because with someone like Naz, failure isn't just a setback, it's a death sentence. So as Nate sits there, trying to convince the panel, it doesn't feel like he's fighting for a project. It feels like he's fighting for his life. And the trailer subtly suggests that this fight might not go in his favor. Now, while all of this is happening, Cassie's storyline begins to unfold in a completely different direction, but one that's just as intense. We see her getting into a car with Maddie. And from that moment, there's a clear shift in dynamic. Because this isn't just a casual interaction. This is the beginning of something new. Maddie starts talking about changing Cassie's look, refining her image. And almost instantly, we begin to see that transformation take shape. The way Cassie presents herself starts to change. She looks different, more polished, more curated. And it becomes clear that Maddie isn't just helping her, she's managing her. She's shaping her. And that's where things start to feel a little unsettling. Because while Maddie presents it as an opportunity, there's an underlying sense of control. It's subtle, but it's there. The way she directs Cassie, the way she talks about strategy, about exposure, it feels calculated. Like she has a very specific vision for what Cassie should become. And Cassie goes along with it. We see them heading into a club, stepping into a world that feels loud, overwhelming, and full of pressure. Maddie mentions a guy named Brandon, someone with a massive following. And the goal is simple: get him to take a photo with Cassie. Because if he does, it could change everything for her. More attention, more followers, more money, independence. And that last part is what really drives Cassie. Because deep down she's afraid. Afraid of being stuck in a life where she has no control, no financial freedom. Especially now that she's tied to Nate, whose situation is becoming more unstable by the second. So this new path, it feels like a way out. But the trailer hints that this path might come with its own cost. Because despite all the glamour, all the flashing lights and excitement, there are moments where Cassie looks uncomfortable. Out of place. Like she's stepping into something she doesn't fully understand. And that contrast is important. Because it shows that this isn't who she naturally is. It's who she's trying to become. And when someone starts changing themselves to fit into a world like that, it rarely ends well. What makes this even more interesting is Maddie's role in all of it. On the surface, she seems supportive, helpful, like she's guiding Cassie towards success. But there's also a question that lingers in the background. Is this genuine? Or is there something else driving her? Because if we look back at everything that's happened, there have been moments where Maddie showed signs of jealousy. Moments where her emotions didn't fully align with her actions. So now that she's in a position of control, it raises the possibility that her intentions might not be as pure as they seem. And if that's true, then Cassie could be walking straight into a situation where she's being used rather than helped. Which brings us back to the bigger picture. Because just like Rue, just like Jules, Cassie is also standing at a crossroads. A point where the decisions she makes now are going to define everything that comes next. And based on what the trailer is showing us, it feels like she's choosing a path that looks promising on the outside, but could be very dangerous underneath. And in a show like Euphoria, those kinds of choices never come without consequences. Just when it feels like the trailer has already pushed the tension to its peak, it suddenly takes a much darker turn. And this is where everything begins to feel truly dangerous. Because up until now, we've been watching pressure build. But here, we start to see that pressure explode. The shift begins with Alamo. There's a moment where he looks directly at Rue and says that she has a certain look in her eye, like a rat trying to figure out where it's going to go next. And that line alone completely changes the dynamic between them. Because it tells us one thing very clearly: he doesn't trust her anymore. And in his world, trust is everything. The second that doubt creeps in, things become unpredictable. Because someone like Alamo isn't going to wait around for confirmation. If he feels like Rue is a risk, then he's going to act on that instinct. And considering everything that's happening with the police, it makes sense why he would start to question her. But what makes this even more intense is how the trailer builds around that suspicion. We see quick glimpses of surveillance footage, money being stored, people watching closely. It creates this feeling that Rue is constantly being observed, like every move she makes is being analyzed. And when you combine that with the pressure from law enforcement, it creates a situation where she has no room to breathe. She's being watched from every side. At the same time, there's another presence that starts to rise in the background: Lori. Even though she's not directly in every scene, her influence is still there, and the trailer reminds us of that in a very emotional way. We see her mourning over her bird, calling it her perfect little guy, as it's being lowered into the ground. And while that might seem like a quiet moment compared to everything else, it carries a lot of weight. Because that bird wasn't just a pet, it was something she cared about deeply. And in a world where people like Lori don't show vulnerability easily, that kind of attachment means something. So when it's taken away from her, It's not just loss, it's personal. And when things become personal for someone like her, retaliation isn't far behind. The trailer starts to connect the dots without saying it directly. We hear someone warning Alamo not to trust her, which most likely refers to Rue. And right after that, everything escalates. First, we see masked individuals storming into a club, guns raised, people being held at gunpoint, chaos breaking out in every direction. And in that moment, it becomes clear that this isn't random. This is an attack. And all signs point towards Laurie's crew being behind it. Because if there's one thing the trailer is building towards, it's this collision between different forces. Alamo's operation, Laurie's retaliation, and Rue stuck right in the middle of it all. And the club becomes the perfect setting for that collision. A place where everything can unfold at once. But what makes this sequence even more intense is how it ties back to Rue. Because earlier in the trailer, we saw her observing things very closely, especially the safe and the person managing it. And now, during the attack, that same person appears to be targeted. Which raises a huge question. Was that just a coincidence? Or did Rue have something to do with it? It's a possibility that the trailer subtly hints at. Maybe she gave information. Maybe she made a move to protect herself. Or maybe, she's trying to play both sides in order to survive. But if that's the case, then she's stepping into extremely dangerous territory. Because in a situation like this, betrayal doesn't go unnoticed. And then we get one of the most intense moments in the entire trailer, Rue being held at gunpoint. Everything slows down in that instant. Because after everything we've seen, everything that's been building, it all leads to this. She's face to face with the consequences, with no clear way out. And the implication here is strong, that she might be forced to open the safe, to hand over the money, just to stay alive. Which brings everything full circle. The police are after her. Alamo is doubting her. Laurie's crew might be targeting her. And now, she's standing in the middle of a situation where one wrong move could end everything. This isn't just pressure anymore. This is survival. And what makes it even more gripping is that we still don't know what choice she's going to make. Because at this point, every option comes with a cost. Every decision leads to a consequence. And no matter what she does, someone is going to lose. That's the kind of tension the trailer leaves us with. A situation where there are no easy outcomes. Only dangerous ones.